I'm Doug Stinson. A little history on the American tree farm system. Washington State is home of the first tree farm. Weyerhaeuser established the Clemens Tree Farm in 1941 near Montesano, Washington. A few years later, the Washington Farm Forestry Association began. My family and I are tree farmers in Lewis County, Washington. Our tree farm was certified by the American Tree Farm System in 1981. Since then, we have been named State and Regional Tree Farmers of the Year. I've been on the National Operating Committee of the American Tree Farm System and most recently was named Regional Tree Farm Inspector of the Year. For the past 10 years, I have trained individuals to be tree farm inspectors. Down through the years, we have hosted numerous tours of our tree farm for various groups, including students from the state's colleges and universities and fourth grade students in Project Learning Tree. I'm also a board member of the Washington Tree Farm Program, which is co-sponsored by the Washington Farm Forestry Association and the Washington Forest Protective Association. The Washington Farm Forestry Program is run by tree farm committees made up of foresters and small forest landowners who volunteer their time. Foresters from around the state volunteer their time to certify tree farms into the program. American Tree Farm System certification is increasingly requested by mills and the marketplace to validate good stewardship. Why do I advocate for the American Tree Farm System? 1, tree farmers are the true stewards of the land. 2, tree farmers love their land and are dedicated forest managers. 3, certification by the American Tree Farm System recognizes good stewardship and creates a common bond with other tree farmers. 4, being a member of the state and local chapters of the American Tree Farm System provides education and the opportunity to meet and collaborate with other tree farmers. 5, having the well-known green and white tree farm sign on your property tells everyone that yours is a well-managed forest. A Washington State Tree Farm of the Year is named each April from candidates nominated by the tree farm inspectors and the local chapters of the Washington Farm Forestry Association. This video presentation was made possible by the generous contributions from the U.S. Forest Service, State and Private Forestry, Port Blakely Tree Farms, and the Washington State SFI Implementation Committee, Washington Forest Protection Association, and the Washington Farm Forestry Association. The World Forestry Center made their beautiful facility available for filming this introduction. Please settle back and enjoy this video presentation as we highlight and honor 4 outstanding tree farmers who are continuing to carry on the tradition of good forest stewardship for generations to come.
My name is Mona Campbell, and we're here at Christopherson Farm on Camano Island. The farm's been in my family for 100 years this year. It was purchased in 1912 by my great-grandfather. When the property was purchased in 1912, the log cabin was there. It was built in the 1880s, and it is purportedly the oldest standing building on the island. And we have about 100 acres of forest land on our property, and half is agriculture. Well, our farm has so many different habitats on it. It's really amazing. As we developed our forest stewardship plan, we really learned a lot more about our forest, and we have open spaces, we have streams, we have sort of upland habitat and wetland habitat. So it's very biodiverse, and we seek to sort of improve that over time. Yeah, this meadow is dedicated to Richard. He passed away, and this is the sort of place that he loved to be, so we made it a memorial to him. So we have, timber's always been a part of the farm activities here. And so it has been Douglas fir up until quite recently, when alder became a harvestable tree, or people viewed it as a wood product. And so we've had several harvests over the years, and now our plan is to basically harvest 10 acres every 10 years. And we have about 100 acres, so that's harvesting a tenth every 10 years. And so that helps provide our age differentiation we talked about. And also it preserves one stand basically to not be cut at all. And so it's really a 90-year rotation, so that one stand stays as an old growth forest. Well, we had, to access the southern part of our property, there had been a culvert many years ago. It was installed, I think, maybe in the early 1900s, and it allowed this creek that runs year-round to pass under this road. But over the years, it just basically dissolved into nothing, so that there is just a stream crossing our road. But that road is a kind of a vital access to a lot of the property, and so through funding with the EQIP program, administered through NRCS, we were able to replace that with a ford. So the ford was designed to allow the stream to just flow right across the road, and it was engineered by NRCS, and you'll see a little bit of black sticking up, and that's a plastic crate-like material that allows, that holds the gravel in place, basically. So it's covering the entire road, and the rocks and gravel on top stay in place with that material. And then as the stream flow rises and falls, it pretty much stays in place, and you can cross with a vehicle without disturbing too much of the material. And NRCS helped with the design of the whole project, and then with our labor and our funding as well, we were able to install it, I think in 2006. For years, our property has been a very important part of the community here on Camino Island. It's very visible from one of the main roads that comes onto the island, and it's been certainly a treasure for our family, but it's also been a treasure for the community. And as we've been active managers, our generation, we've been trying to come up with ideas to support the place into the future. And we came up with a zipline canopy tour for the property, and this tour came out of really our understanding of the forest and our agricultural practice here on our organic farm, because we've learned so much, and it's such a treasure. We thought, how about featuring all of these unique environments that we have here, and also share some of the knowledge we have about forest stewardship and the wildlife and that's here. The cedar stump here is a remnant of one of the early harvests. You can see the springboard notches, and this is along the trail for the canopy tour, so our guests get to learn a little bit about how they used to log in the area. Our guides really help people every step of the way, and they also provide some of the interpretive information about the history of the land and the flora and fauna that people see. And it's wonderful because it's a low impact activity, and it allows many more people to experience our woods firsthand. And I think that when people are doing something as fun as ziplining, they're open to learning about where they are, and they're more interested in the environment they're in. So this has been a really exciting new business for us, and we've been operating for a little over a year, and we've had more than 6,000 people come through, and so that's been a really neat new addition to sort of the recreational part of our woods. Excellent. We're here at the Little K Creek. This whole area along the creek is protected by a forest riparian easement, and we also have our zipline tour crisscrossing the creek. It's a great way to get our guests close to some of the older trees on the property, and also see all the different flora that grows along the riparian zone. Our farm is, we're the fourth generation family owners, and we pretty much get all the family out here working whenever we have work to do, and that means the fifth generation and the sixth. We want them as invested as we are, and our property is owned by an LLC. It allows us a vehicle to help move our property on to the next generation, and we're trying to do structure our business here, which it is a business, so that it can be passed on to the next generation without it being a burden, really. So we're trying to make it sustainable as a timber activity, and also we have developed a canopy tour that helps also financially sustain the property, and we're working very hard to make it a viable and living thing to pass on to the next generation.
Well, my name is Jerry Rytan. This is my wife Sharon. We together have worked this tree farm for the last 15 years. This place was originally designated a forest land or tree farm in 1985. The homestead itself, we're sitting with, was built in 1888. My family bought this place in 1960, and we totally restored the home about 12 years ago. Now we're located between Paulsbo and Port Gamble. We're in the Kitsap Peninsula. The tree farm itself is approximately 60 acres. The reason I want to maintain it as a tree farm is not so much to make a profit on, not so much to grow trees. Although we do a lot of that, I like to keep the aesthetics. I like to keep it natural. I want to keep it as close to what nature did as possible. And that's my goal for this place, is to maintain it as is and not strip it of all the trees and start over. You see a lot of old logging sites where they have taken out trees years ago with stumps cut off 10, 12 feet off the ground, 8, 10 feet through. You see a few of those with new trees growing out of them. I think that's quite a historical situation. This homestead, like I say, was built in 1888. These people built this home from lumber on the land, built out of hand-hewed cedar timbers, dovetailed in the corners, built like a box. When in the process of putting a foundation of some sort under this house and putting up other forms of walls and wallpaper, we noticed that the house was perfectly square. There was no need to do any leveling. Every wall was up and down. I put plasterboard up in the ceiling and it fit in the corners. I put flooring down, it fit in the corners, so there was no need to make any cutting. Absolutely square. And when you think about the tools and the equipment they had to work with in those days, it's absolutely amazes me. It was added on to about 10, 15 years later, which gave them a kitchen, but no bathroom. That bathroom as it exists today was a wood room. The house actually was, in its early days, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, was used as a schoolhouse. It was the first schoolhouse in this area. They had approximately 10 to 12 students. Their primary books and learning literature was the Sears and Roebuck or Monkey Ward catalogs. There's families lived up here. His name was Nils Hansen, and the place actually stayed in their name, I think, probably till my folks bought it, but it was abandoned. When they bought the home, it was totally abandoned. There had been no life. Trees were growing up inside. There was nobody living here. And we found, of course, several letters and stuff, and we've been digging around, but apparently in the 40s somebody moved in here for a while and it was used as a house of ill repute. And I'm not sure how busy they were, but this far out of the city, I can imagine the activity that must have been going on. The history of the management in the past was, when we first converted this to forestry, there were quite a few older trees. And we began by going selectively logging. We did mostly selective logging, took out the bigger ones. Nowadays, of course, the bigger ones are not eligible for saw logs, so you start looking for the smaller stuff, and that's why I kind of like to let some of these big ones go. We have about 3 5-acre parcels or patches which we completely stripped down because of alder and intrusive brush, which is a problem up here in this north end or west end. The brush is very intrusive into the growing of the trees. But anyway, we replanted that about 12 years ago, and looking around you can see them. There was an alder patch we completely cleared out, about 4 or 5 acres of it, and we planted that in small firs. There's a area down in the other end there, which like down this north end of the property, doing mostly thinning. I don't think I want to do a whole lot of real clear cutting anymore. That's been my big challenge, is to keep the brush taken down, and it seems like the more you cut it, the better it grows. And I hesitate to spray, although in a few cases we've had to do a little bit of spraying with Roundup and whatnot. And especially the big challenge was when the trees are relatively young and the grass and the brushes outgrow the trees. So you really have to keep it down when they're young. Once they get older, they tend to shade the brush sun out, and the brush ceases to grow. There's a guy by the name of Bodsworth. He is more inclined to preserve trees for animals. And as we walk around, you'll see several trees that are completely look like fishnets. They got holes in them, and the birds and the woodpeckers. This is Woodpecker Hill, and it's called that for a reason. When we restored this house, I was putting up the soffits under the decks on the roofs, and I was getting ready to enclose it. And that night I came up here, and the house was full of woodpeckers. They were having a party because I was closing off their entranceway. Fish-wise, we have a small pond here on the property. It appears that it's been invaded by bass. So we have a few bass. It's not a flowing year-round pond, so we can't raise trout or anything like that. In the past, there's been several groups of walkers that just use the place. They love the woods and they like to walk through and talk. I don't discourage it because these folks tend to tell me if they see something amiss. I've been told of people poaching. I've been told of people coming up here with their little axes, these maple guitar wood makers, chopping out little chunks of the bark to see if it's got figure wood in it or not. And so I enjoy having the people come up here, I really do. Now this particular area here is a recreation site my oldest son put together for himself to bring his camper up here and spend the summertime, his vacation and whatnot. It's kind of attractive. It's got left a lot of the trees, but let the grass grow. And I just want to repeat the fact that I'm really into aesthetics and keeping this place as natural as possible. And I really think I want to let it turn into an old growth forest. You're not going to get rich tree farming. It has to be a hobby, something you enjoy, and I want the family to enjoy it.
Hi, we're Dale and Marilyn Tracy, and we own the Hillcrest Tree Farm that's located in Chehalis, Washington. The total acreage now is 146 acres. We initially started in 1978 with 52 acres and then had an opportunity to add acreage to that, an additional 94 acres in 1987. So we're enjoying it a lot.
When we first purchased the tree farm, it was basically a one-age stand. Our goal was to harvest in such a manner as to divide it up so we had staggered ages in the stands, which is better for the wildlife, and it gives us more flexibility at harvest. So far we've been able to divide it into 4 age groups now. We're hoping to get 1 more out of it. We've almost reached our goal. 1 more harvest and we'll have it. The property was basically logged in the late 40s or the early 50s. Part of the stand that remains is behind our house here. When we harvested a small piece in 1979 when we first moved up here. We logged another piece in 87, another one in 98, and another one in 2007. Each time we harvest, we do some site prep, whether it's scarification or just a site prep spray. We replant to 10 by 10, 435 trees per acre. We normally use Douglas fir 1+1 seedlings, which we've had exceedingly good luck with. Normally, 4 to 6 years into it, we have to do a slashing to remove the hardwoods in the competition. We do a pre-commercial thinning at age 13 to 15. And this year we've done our first commercial thinning at age 24. And so far, we're very happy with it. The limbing up of the trees, the pruning, most people do it for clear wood, for moldings. I do it for aesthetics. I like the looks of it. I like to be able to look back into my stand. I just feel more comfortable when I'm out on the tree farm not to be closed in. So we do a considerable amount of pruning.
He likes to see the cougars coming.
Yes. When we first bought the place, we had a small 3-acre timber patch that we had a timber sale on and sold it to a local mill. When we logged in 87, we did the same thing and sold the timber to a large timber company. After that, we purchased a small cat. We did our own logging for a few years. When we got tired of that, we started hiring Forest Resources Incorporated, Steve Peterson, to manage our stands for us. I myself am a regeneration forester and not no expertise in logging, which Steve does have, and we trust him and have complete confidence in his work.
Yeah, it's great to have somebody that can set you up with the mills and find a good logger to come in that
And know how to do the sorts.
Yes.
And
it's very beneficial.
it's difficult to buck the logs and get the right sorts if you're not doing it every day. Okay, the tree we're looking at is a Douglas fir. If you'll note, it lost its top. 2 of the limbs took over and formed 2 tops. This is an excellent tree to leave for a wildlife tree for birds to nest in that break up there.
Well, we have something nobody else has. A few years back, Williams Pipeline approached us and said that the gas line was going through here in order to send fuel to the new electric plant down in Chehalis Industrial Park.
Initially, they took a 75-foot strip. They kept 50 feet as a permanent easement and gave 25 feet back to us, which means we're now managing a 25-foot strip that's over 6,100 lineal feet long, and it presents challenges. We have replanted it. We interplanted it with noble fir just for family and friend to use as Christmas trees and boughs. Initially, they were going to bury it at 3 feet, but in that case, we could not drive over it, which would have cut our property in half.
And Williams Pipeline did work with us in order to bury the pipe deep enough so that we were able to allow logging trucks to pass over it.
And we did have a twilight tour in June of this year. We had about 60 tree farm members and community members join us for a tour, which was very enjoyable and educational for both them and us.
They come in and they express an interest, and if they might have trees, we show them what we've done to ours and explain why you need to take care of your trees, why it's beneficial to thin out your hardwood so that your fir can grow and you can grow more merchantable timber that way.
There have been a few times when our neighbor, for one, had family from Ohio out and we took them on a tour of the tree farm. My sister had friends from Maryland out and she brought them here and we gave them a tour. They seemed to enjoy it.
Dale has had several years as a forester. He knows a lot of this that the normal lay person buying a tree farm wouldn't. So in lots of ways, he's got an edge over the person who just walks out of town and decides he wants to buy trees in the country.
Our primary goal of the tree farm is to provide activity for Marilyn and I during our retirement, to provide us with timber, export timber, domestic timber, and then pulp, to provide for our grandkids a place for them to play, and in the future for them to have a tree farm of their own.
A management plan is important, I think, for the people that follow in your footsteps, because it's hard to just step into a position and know what to do. So Dale's management plan has let everyone know when it has logged, when he plans to do the thinning, and what the next step should be and approximately when it should happen. So that's going to be a blessing, I think, to our son or a grandson or whoever takes over the tree farm in the future.
Right now, we don't plan on any more final harvest. We're getting old enough, we're hoping to do some commercial thinnings to improve, for stand improvement and to bring a little cash in. If necessary, we have approximately 12 acres that we could harvest now, but we're going to let it grow. It's a park for the grandkids, and we really don't need to log it at this time, so we have no final harvest plans.
Gives us a nice place to walk in the evening after dinner, too.
We
We want to enjoy the tree farm, too.
Welcome to our tree farm. We call this Ken and Bonnie Miller's family tree farm. We're here on 40 acres. It is also our home site. We also have an additional 42 acres down by Oakville, which was our original tree farm. We bought our first tree farm in Oakville in 1989 and planted it in 1990. The home place here we bought in 1993. So we bought a clear cut, and Bonnie and I and our son did plant 18,000 trees down there. Our Oakville property is where Bonnie and I were both raised in this little small town. This place here is close to Olympia, which comes in handy for a lot of regulatory stuff I've been involved in, but more importantly, it's close to our 3 children and their families who live in the Tacoma, Auburn, Seattle area. So they can come down, bring their friends down. We just touch on Scott Lake. So we've got canoes and of course our trails. We got all kinds of trails with for quads and motorcycles. Our goal has been that the kids will come down here and recreate and relax so we don't have to go to Seattle and Tacoma. I had a 35-year career with a forest products company selling lumber and plywood and all that kind of stuff. I really had a fondness for the forest products industry and kind of wanted to give something back. So particularly at this farm, we've worked real hard at educational outreach and try to get people to believe we're the good guys. Well, that's really been the focus, outreach in a variety of ways is really kind of what I'm all about, or we're all about. We of course have school kids. For a number of years I did interpretive walks out of the adjacent state park here for campers, and we would come through the state park and then come into our place and talk about the difference between parks and commercial forest land. We've had a lot of mini field days for our Washington Farm Forestry Association and tree farm events. We've had school kids here. We've had a variety of regulatory meetings here with kind of brainstorming sessions with environmental folks, regulatory folks, landowners, anything to try to help tell the story of small tree farmers and try to show that you know, we're like industry in a lot of ways, but we're very unique in many, many other ways. On this tree farm here that we live on, we've done just about everything. We've pruned to a fault. We've pruned practically every tree on the place. When we first got it, I planted 6,000 fill-in trees because it had been kind of cut over, high graded, looked like it hadn't been replanted the last time they did a partial cut. So I've got a tree growing every place there should be a tree. Did one little patch cut of alder that was past its prime. Got cedar regenerated there, and we've done a fair amount of pre-commercial, and thanks to the snowstorm last year, we did some commercial thinning. Kind of like to use a phrase another foresters taught me. It says, try to let the trees do the talking. They will tell you kind of what needs to be done. So I'm trying to kind of learn to listen to the trees a little bit. Our first 30 acres that we got, we did plant that with cost share. And that was back in the days when there was quite a few more stewardship foresters available, and they were our go-to people. So we did get a lot of help from them, but then early on we got involved in the Washington Farm Forestry Association. They had some kind of stewardship classes similar to what the state is doing right now, and that's really where we learned most of our forestry. And the cool part about it is because we were broke, because we put all of our money in the land, the association folks, there was lots of experts, a lot of people that knew a lot of stuff, you know, so we would just kind of pick their brains, and I think that's a lot about what farm forestry is about. Most of us are tighter than bark on a tree in the winter time, so we try to get as much free help as we can. But finally learned the hard way, trying to do everything myself. I ended up spending more money than if I'd have just hired it done. So I have had some maple treatment and a little bit of pre-commercial thinning done by somebody I met through the Farm Forestry Association. But most everything I try to do myself as cheap as I possibly can, except when I'm overpaying my grandkids for what little work I can get out of them. We do have some wildlife trees identified. Again, another organization, the Family Forest Foundation, put out some nice yellow cards. We put those on some of our wildlife trees. But I guess the home place here, it's more about recreation for the grandkids. We keep all the trails up. We have more toys than they can possibly use, but they bring friends, and they're riding quads and motorbikes, and taking one of the boats out on the lake, just getting the kids here to enjoy it and come to love the trees and the forest like we do. I always try to work in a little educational stuff, try to get them to learn a little bit, you know, why we're important and keeping on the landscape, and why this needs to stay in forest land rather than what's highest and best use according to the regulators is house development. This would be a great home site here, but we sure don't want that to happen. We've tried to be a good steward of the land so that the work that I've done along with the Washington Farm Forestry Association with the regulators shows we're doing good things and shows that we matter, and hopefully they'll treat us a little kinder when it comes to regulations for the small forest landowners.